Welcome into Mock Trial Masterclass, your guide to controlling the courtroom. I'm Luke and I want you to be a mock trial master. Let's talk about how you can make that happen. A little while ago, I got a comment on one of the videos on the Mock Trial Masterclass YouTube channel that basically asked, Luke, what do I do to deal with bad judges? And I immediately knew exactly what this commenter was talking about. Because those of us who've done mock trial for a little while know that sometimes the judges flat out stink. For one reason or another, it's not uncommon for the presiding judge of a mock trial to seem as though they have no idea what they're doing. And look, I have run into countless incredible judges in the mock trial world, but unfortunately, I've also run into the other variety plenty of times too. And I know you guys have also felt the same thing. So, let's feel each other's pain together, and in this video, talk about 3 things you can do to deal with those bad judges. Because it's not a matter of if you're going to deal with a bad judge, it's a matter of when you're going to deal with a bad judge. Maybe it's a judge who doesn't know the rules of evidence very well. Maybe it's a judge who, for one reason or another, is very cranky and short and is not letting you try the case in the way you want it to be done. Whatever is making your judge bad, a lot of us have been there. I've been there a lot, both as a competitor and watching my team compete as a coach. And so I want to share with you the strategies for kind of doing what you can in those situations. Before we hop in, I want to remind you that if there's any topic at all you want to see me cover in a future Mock Trial Masterclass video or podcast, leave a comment below letting me know. I love making videos based on the comments that you guys leave. All right, you ready to hop in? Here's how to deal with a bad judge. My first tip for dealing with a bad judge is that you shouldn't be afraid to teach the judge. Because like I mentioned in the introduction, some judges come into a round and don't know the rules of evidence as well as they probably should. Now, is that completely inexcusable and awful and a bad reflection of our legal system? 1,000,000% yes. But for one reason or another, it happens all the time. And so when you encounter those moments where you have a judge who doesn't know the rules of evidence as well as they should, you can't be afraid to polite and respectfully teach them. And again, those words polite and respectful are really important. What I'm not talking about here is you get into a fight with a judge and you say, Judge, that's a wrong interpretation of this rule and you can see blah, 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 right? That's not going to work. But what I have seen work countless times, both from me doing it when I was a competitor, watching other teams do it, and now watching my team do it as a coach, is again, politely correcting the judge. You know, the judge doesn't understand the rule of evidence. And you just politely say, Your Honor, if I may show you, rule 4th billion, whatever, subsection, whatever, it actually says this and that and that. And as it applies to this case, such and such, right? You hear the tone I'm talking with. It's a kind tone. There, you can, almost hear the smile that's on my face. We're not berating the judge for being wrong. We're simply helping the judge out. We're saying, hey, we understand that you're very wise and you're very smart, but in this specific instance, you might have missed the point a little bit because X, Y, and Z, and we have a reason for that. Even judges who might be a little rough around the edges, I have seen be receptive to this when done the right way. Now, you don't want to overdo it, and you definitely don't want to do it if your objection has already been sustained or overruled. That is your signal to stop talking altogether. But if you're still in the fight and it seems like the judge isn't understanding you or isn't agreeing with you, don't be afraid to politely, respectfully teach them. Tip number 2 when dealing with difficult judges is to call some audibles. In other words, make some alterations, some changes to what you're doing based on what it's clear they do and do not like. Now, we're not talking about wholesale changes here. I don't want you to throw out a cross. I don't want you to throw out a direct because the judge is acting in a particular way. Because a lot of times in mock trial, at least at the high school level, the presiding judge is not actually scoring the round. Now, this is different at some high school tournaments, like at Empire, a lot of times the judge is going to score. And then once you get into the college world, you usually have a round with just 2 people in it, a judge and a juror, quote unquote, and both of them are going to be scoring. But you can't let a judge being nitpicky or weird or not very good at their job dissuade you from doing your case in the way you had planned it. But if you can make a small little tweak here and there, or even a significant one as long as it's not too significant, based on what the judge likes and does not like, that's going to really help you out as you're dealing with a difficult judge. So for example, maybe as you're going through the course of a round, you realize that this judge is just not going to entertain relevance objections. You've seen 2 relevance objections, both of them got immediately shut down without the judge even letting the other side respond or even letting the team that made the objection explain it. So you know what you should probably do at that point? Unless it's completely over the top out of bounds, don't make relevance objections. Because logic should tell you you're probably not going to win them with this judge. Those are the kinds of adjustments you have to make. Again, no wholesale changes. We're not throwing out any material. But if you're dealing with a judge who's not very good, who's kind of difficult, don't be afraid to call some audibles and make some changes. Again, based on what they do and don't like and what they prove in both of those categories. Before we get into my third tip for dealing with bad judges, I want to remind you that I am available for coaching for you, for your team, whatever you want to do, I'm your guy. I can teach on an area of mock trial you want to know more about. I can listen to your speeches, your directs, your crosses, and give you feedback and tips. We can develop a witness character together. We can develop theme and theory together. I've done all of those for teams all over the country. It's so much fun. I love doing it, and I'd love to do it with you and your team next. To make that happen, you can click the link in the description on YouTube or in the show notes on podcast platforms. All right, my third tip for dealing with bad judges is to simply roll with the punches. Now, this might sound like an obvious one to you, but I see teams all the time who run into a difficult judge and let it completely melt them down, and they lose all sense of their strategy and all sense of their preparation that they did leading into the round, and they just let this bad judge completely crush them. You can't do that. You can't be that mentally weak where you let a bad judge completely ruin your round. Does it absolutely suck when you have a judge that's not very good? Yes. Yes, it does. But you've got to maintain your composure. You got to keep your cool. If you have a very mean judge up there on the bench who's not allowing you to do very much, your demeanor should not change one bit. You can't let it affect your demeanor. You can't let it affect your level of positivity. You can't let it bring you down, because scorers will notice when that is happening. So you just can't get rattled. You've got to make a distinct mental effort to stay composed, stay at this kind of normal line that you would normally be at. Judge makes a stupid ruling. There's no, yes, Your Honor, and we sit down, kind of defeated. No, judge makes a stupid ruling. Yes, Your Honor. We ask our next question. We move on. Judge does something that we weren't expecting and that kind of derails where we were going. We don't, a moment to confer with co-counsel, and then we look around and try to figure something out, and oh my goodness, it's all ruined. No, we don't do that at all. We take a deep breath and we say, okay, Your Honor, may I move on? And then we work through the problem. We do something to try to get around this kind of egg that the judge has laid on what we were trying to do. Is it easier said than done? Yes, it absolutely is. And I'm not going to lie, I have, certainly when I was a competitor, let a bad judge bring me down. But looking back, number one, I could have avoided that, and number two, it didn't do me any favor. So if you're dealing with a bad judge in a round, you've recognized that, you and your teammates sitting there together, don't let it get you down. Keep your cool, maintain your composure, and roll with the punches. If you can do that while calling the audibles you need to call and also not being afraid to teach the judge, you're going to be just fine. You're going to power through, and years later, you're going to be telling funny stories about, remember that mean judge we had that one time, but we won the round anyway? At least that's what I hope is going to happen for you, and I know it will if you follow those 3 tips.